Hello there. So today we're doing something that I didn't expect to do next. I thought next we'd be doing the skull in order to finish off the axioskeleton and then start with the appendicular skeleton, but apparently not. Apparently we're doing the upper and lower limbs today. So today's video we'll be talking about the bones of the upper limb and the bones of the lower limb. The bones seem to be the easier part. There's the joints, which seems to be very much more complicated than the joints of the axioskeleton. So yeah, the bones of the upper limb. Okay, so I'll divide this video in two parts, maybe both in one video, we'll see about this. The bones of the upper limb, which we'll be doing first. So the bones of the upper limb are divided into two parts, the griddle and the free bones. The griddle is the part where the bones of the upper limb touch the axioskeleton basically, or maybe that joint between the axioskeleton and the bones of the upper limb. And there are the free bones, which are the bones that are apparently free from the axioskeleton. I don't know why they're called free bones. So to get started, the griddle is also divided into two parts, into two bones in the upper limb. So now we're talking about the upper limbs, the bones of the upper limb, the griddle of the bones of the upper limb, and the first bone we'll be talking about is the clavicle bone. So the clavicle bone is this bone up in here, the one here I have highlighted in red, and that's how it looks without just like out of this entire skeletal. And yeah, this is how it looks. Something to keep in mind is that here is a sternal end. So the sternal end, from the name I could guess that the sternal end is tied to this bone here, which is called the sternum. So sternum bone, sternal end. So yeah, another end here, acromial end. So here the name is acromial end. So I'm guessing there's a bone here where the acromial end touch the other bone, and I'm guessing it will be called acromin. So we'll see in a minute. So yeah, here's this. This is very important to keep in mind because this will help later when we're talking about the muscles, because here all those highlighted parts are where the muscles touch the clavicle bone. And you can see here there's that groove here, the subclavicle groove, and this groove is there because the subclavicle muscle touches here. All right, moving up next we have the scapula. So the second bone is the backbone here. You see this bone? This is called the scapula bone, and that's how it looks from front and back. This video is very bad because apart from joints, there's nothing much to talk about. It's just parts that you need to keep in mind, names that you need to keep stacking up your head. I don't know. Every time I ask the professor if we need to know the names of everything, he's just telling me it's up to you, which is not a definite answer. It just makes me insecure about everything. Yeah, so okay, so just keep in mind it's very actually simple if we have to keep it. There's a superior angle, inferior angle. It's all the names are very straightforward and have something to do with either position or shape or another muscle that touches that spot. Yeah, something to keep in mind though is the spine in the back of the scapula, which you can see the spine here has the acromial angle, the end of the spine, and the acromial angle is where the acromin is. Remember when I was talking about the clavicle, it has the acromial end. So the acromial end touches the acromin, which is this part of the scapula. So yeah, here is the clavicle cut, and we have the acromin, which is part of the scapula bone. All right, up next we start talking about the free bones, not the griddle. We close the griddle, we'll talk about the free bones. So the free bones, there are three main bones, or actually not three bones, there are more than that, but three parts. We have this, this part, and this part, the hand. So the first bone is the humerus bone, which is, some people call it the funny bone, which is not funny at all. It's this bone in here. Nothing to keep in mind, just names everywhere. Oh yeah, there's the radial groove. Radial groove is for the radial nerve, which passes through here. A very big nerve that goes all the way to the fingers, and if it gets affected, you cannot move your fingers very well. Yeah, that's pretty much it with the humerus. And radius ulna. Okay, we'll give it a second. Yeah, so the radius ulna are two bones that are here basically, and they're together, they're beside each other. The one end touches the humerus bone, and the other end touches the bones of the hands, which we'll get into right now. So the bones of the hand, there are three types of bones in the hand. There are the carpal bones, which are this mess of bones in here, which very simple. There are the metacarpal bones, so like bones on steroid, I don't know. And there are the phalanges bones, the extra bones in here. Again, I'm saying this video, I'm not talking a lot about it because it's all about names and keeping names. Where the action really starts are in the joints of the upper and lower limbs, which I'll get to in the next video. Okay, so now we close the upper limb. We talk about the lower limb. So bones of the lower limb. Again, it's divided. This should be close. All right, it's divided into the griddle and the free bone. So again, griddle close to the axial skeleton, free bones, the other bones. So the griddle is just one bone here, or actually one on each side, which is a hip bone. So hip bone, here's a very general shape to how it looks. And something to keep in mind, do you remember this? This is the sacrum bone, the end of the backbone. So sacrum, and here is the coccyx. The sacrum bone, on the side, it has this surface, the articular surface. And the articular surface is where the backbone, axial skeleton, ties up with the lower limb. And it ties up, ties up with this part of the hip bone, which is called the ilium. Yeah, so now I'll get a bunch of names here and there, but again, we don't have to keep all of them apparently. Maybe do we? I have no idea. For myself, I am gonna remember all of the names. Just something to keep in mind, it's divided into 1, 2, 3 parts, and as you can see here, there's the articular surface, and that articular surface is where the hip bone touches the sacrum bone here, articular surface. And what else to keep in mind? Oh yeah, the hip bone is divided into 3 parts. The ilium, the ischium, this part here, and the pubis. And yeah, one tip was keeping the names of all this is just to remember the position of everything. Like here we have the posterior inferior iliac spine. Here we have posterior superior iliac spine. On the other side, I could guess that there's an anterior superior, anterior inferior iliac spine. Yeah, so it's very simple, straightforward, but it seems like a lot, but it's actually very simple. All right, so closing up with this, next up we have the free bones of the lower limb. So the free bones of the lower limb, we have the femur, patella, tibia, fibular, and the bones of the foot. So first bone is the femur bone, which is the bone in here. And how do you identify the difference between the femur bone and the bones and the bone of the humer bone? Here we have it. Bones, the free bones, humerus bone. How do you identify the difference between this one and this one is that this one has a very long neck, while the other one does not have that long of a neck. It has a surgical neck and an anatomical neck, but you can see it's very short, but this one has a very long neck, which helps me identify the difference between the humerus bone and the femur bone. Nothing else to keep in mind, just names everywhere that you gotta keep. Next up, we have the patella bone, which is this bone here in front of the femur and the fibula and tibular bones, which is basically the bone when you feel when you touch your knee, the front of your knee. This bone in here. Next up, we have the tibia and fibular bones, which are those 2 bones here, where the lower part of your leg is, and just again terms everywhere. Last up, we have the bones of the foot. It's also divided into the same thing: the carpals, the metacarpals, and the phalanges. And yeah, here we have a superior aspect, meaning looking at it from above, and this one is an inferior aspect, looking at it from under. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. In the next video is where the action really starts, talking about the joints of the upper and lower limb. This part seems way more complicated than the joints of the axial skeleton. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope that was helpful.